Joined by our friend Riley Gaines, very fast swimmer, very fast, and also a great lady out there fighting for sanity when it comes to women in sports. She's of Fox News and Outkick. Riley, appreciate you being back with us here once again. The fight continues even after this election, and it feels like a lot of people on the left realize that this is an 80-20 issue against them. You are still coming up against at least opposition when it comes to the Democrats, the laws they want, the policies. What's the latest in the fight for women in athletics not having to compete against men?
Well, it is so good to be back on with you. Look, we know, the American people know, we are finally in a position, which is in total contrast to the last 4 years, we are finally in a position to get things done. We have the ability to, especially at the federal level. We've seen President Trump sign a beautifully and thoroughly written executive order banning men from participating in women's sports. We've seen H.R. 28 pass the House. We will see a cloture vote tonight in the U.S. Senate, which transparently is not looking too good. Of course, this is something that you can imagine will fall on party lines. They need to cross that 60-vote hurdle. So we shall see there. But all that to say, this executive order and what's happening at the federal level, it certainly does not absolve states from doing what they need to do in passing legislation to protect women. So I'm thrilled today to be in Minnesota, of course, governed by Tim Walz. You remember that guy, Tampon Tim. So we had a fantastic rally today, myself alongside people, amazing leaders like Jack Brewer, who has just been fantastic in this fight. Other initiatives he's taken on is the fatherlessness epidemic, especially among those who are incarcerated. He's amazing. So it was awesome. We had so many people, concerned parents. We had young athletes there, hundreds of Minnesotans who had enough, who are ready to lend their voices to the fight, similar to what we've seen in Maine over the past few days, of course, following that interaction between Governor Mills and President Trump just a few weeks ago.
Riley, appreciate you being on with us and all the battles that you're fighting. I just kind of want to bring this home for everybody out there listening, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because you've been far more involved in all these details. This bill to protect women and ensure that women's sports are only played by women only got 2 Democrat votes in the House, I believe. Republicans uniformly supported it, but only 2 Democrats did. In the Senate, there are 53 Republicans that are going to vote for this. But in order for it to actually become a law due to the filibuster, we need 60 total votes, right? So that would mean 7 Democrat senators would need to step forward and support it. You can explain that a little bit more, but have any Democrat senators yet publicly said that they will vote? I can't believe this is real. I still can't believe this is political, that they will vote to ensure that men don't compete in women's sports. Have any Democrat senators said, hey, I'm for this?
That's funny, Clay. The only one that did was Senator Manchin, who, of course, is not there any longer. So, no, we have not seen any support from Democrats. You mentioned the House. We saw 2 Democrats vote in favor of protecting women and girls in sports. And, of course, these were 2 Texas Democrats who probably don't want to lose their seat in 2026 or 2028. But nothing from the Senate, which is amazing to me because you have all these swing states, especially where, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, where President Trump won, but the Republican Senate nominee did not. So all that to say, we are watching, especially people in these swing states, people like Tammy Baldwin. Hopefully we can see some common sense from Fetterman. That is someone who, of course, I would not count on him, that's for sure. But we've been surprised by Fetterman before. Elise Slotkin, potentially Senator Ossoff in Georgia, maybe Senator Warnock in Georgia. These are states where we're watching, the people are watching as well.
That's where I was going to hammer here is, Riley, the state of Georgia, double Democrat senators. Trump won by several points. Brian Kemp, the governor, has won by 7 or 8. I saw Tommy Tuberville share that 73% of Georgians, and I bet it's higher than that actually, but 73% of Georgians don't believe that women should be able to compete that men should be able to compete against women. That would be wild if Georgia's Democrat senators aren't willing to get in line, particularly Ossoff, who is up for reelection. And there's talk that Brian Kemp may be running against him. I would think that might be a pretty big deal next year in Georgia.
I think so too. And I want it to be, look, loud. And let me make myself very, very clear here. If these Democrats, or I really will say when, especially those in very blue states, when these Democrats vote no, they can expect 24/7 Republican ads during the campaign cycle and to consistently hammer home the fact that they do not believe girls deserve fair sports. Senator Warnock, again, another Georgia senator, I would have maybe had a little hope. But again, this is the same senator who just a few weeks ago voted no on the Laken-Riley Act, and that happened in his home state of Georgia. So I don't know if there's a lot of hope for Warnock, but there are some eyes on Ossoff for sure.
We're speaking to Riley Gaines of Outkick and Fox News. Riley, we have fantastic VIPs on this show who write into the special VIP email, and one of them has a question for you, or rather, I guess, a comment that I'm supposed to make to you. Be sure and ask Riley, this is from Mark, be sure and ask Riley about her prayer at NASCAR yesterday where she included President Trump in it. Awesome. Tell us about this one, because I didn't see it.
I'm so used to the liberal backlash that I receive. But yesterday I was so honored to pray, say the pre-race invocation at the NASCAR race in Austin, Texas. And so in my prayer, of course, I pray for the safety of the drivers and their protection and the families and the staff and all of that. But in my prayer, I mentioned, I said something to the effect of bless our president, bless his cabinet, bless all of our leaders, that they may seek the Lord and his guidance in all decisions that they make, because if that is done, we will never be steered wrong and America will be made great again. But for saying that, it is amazing the response that I've gotten, which I will say is the support is tenfold anything negative. But people who have reached out to me saying, why would you make this prayer political? Let me be clear. The Bible calls Christians to pray for those in authority. That's made very clear in 1 Timothy. So that's what I was doing, again, to seek the Lord's guidance in every decision that they make, of course. And that's something I prayed for when President Biden was in office as well. I prayed that his eyes would be open to the truth, but I also prayed that he seeks the Lord. The backlash is just amazing to me. And NASCAR, of course, when I said that, you can imagine the response of the crowd, roaring, applause, clapping, all the things, because NASCAR is a sport where that is the base, which is not why I do anything. Of course, I did not say that to appease the base, but the response that I received from the audience was telling.
Riley, you were in the White House when the president signed his Protecting Women Sports decree, and it was an incredible scene with all the young girls in particular all gathered around. What has the NCAA response been so far, and do you think it's adequate?
Well, the NCAA, in true NCAA fashion, has remained spineless. I find it very obscure to believe that the NCAA essentially grew a backbone overnight and decided to protect their athletes, especially their female athletes. They did release a statement following President Trump's executive order, Charlie Baker did, saying that he will do everything to comply with this EO and with the federal law. But they released their new policy, and this policy has glaring loopholes. First and foremost, it does not define male, female, or the word sex itself. It does define gender identity, and it does define man and woman, and it says that these two words are just gender identities. So we see the problem when you don't have these terms defined. We see unelected bureaucrats go through the back door and reinterpret these words to mean what they want them to mean. But the big problem here is it resorts to birth certificates as a way to determine sex, which, again, you can change your birth certificate in all but 6 states in this nation and across the world for that matter. So again, this is not adequate. I believe it's in direct contrast, totally conflicting with President Trump's thoroughly and beautifully written executive order. But the White House has been pretty quick to praise the NCAA in this policy. And so it's been a mission of mine to make sure they know, look, this policy is not good. And if something happens at this point, I believe President Trump will have egg on his face because he has supported this policy. So there's still, of course, time for him to come back and say, you know what, Charlie Baker, NCAA, this is not adequate and this does not follow this executive order. So that's really what we're hoping for.
Riley, as you're out there pushing for sanity here and trying to defend women's sports, I'm wondering what your take is on this. Clay and I just talked about it a few moments ago before you came on and joined us. The Democrats right now, perhaps I think in retreat on this issue, maybe in remission on this issue, are what in your mind? What is it going to take for them to change their minds, or rather, if they won the next election, based on what you see out there, do you think that they would try to enforce all of the gender ideology stuff all over again? I mean, are they still committed to walking down this pathway of, Macho Man Randy Savage competing against the women in the triathlon, et cetera? Is that still a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat plan, or do you think they are looking for an exit off this whole situation?
You know what? If you would have asked me this before November 5th, I would have told you that, of course, the Democrats will recant. They will distance themselves from their voting record. Kamala Harris desperately tried to do such in her campaign cycle. So that's what I would have told you. But what we have seen following the election is not at all what I expected. We have seen these elected officials, essentially the entire political party, as well as left-leaning media, double, triple, quadruple down on this topic, which can only lead you to believe that really it's their religion. They are so committed. Again, take the governor of Maine. She's willing to put her state in a position where they risk losing over $5 billion in federal funding as a small state, a population of 1.4, 1.5 million, a very poor state. They can't survive without federal funding. But you have a governor who is willing to risk every single Mainer's, federal funding for all to insist that boys have a spot to trample and, violate women on women's teams and in women's locker rooms. It is total lunacy. So I believe, look, tomorrow, if the Democrats were to win, let's say, in 4 years, God forbid, someone like AOC, I saw this morning actually where Governor Walz is considering running for president in 2028. God forbid either of these people get in office. I believe at this point, a lot can happen in 4 years, but I believe they will continue to push this nonsense that the American people reject.
Good stuff, Riley. Keep the fight going. We appreciate it. What do you think, by the way, is going to happen in Minnesota? Is Tampon Tim's home state going to protect women playing sports, or do you think they're going to sign up and want more boys in girls' sports?
Well, Minnesota is very unique because they have a one-vote majority in the House, and the Democrats have a one-vote majority in the Senate. So it's a very politically diverse, confusing state. So most everything falls on party lines. So it's not hopeful. It's hopeful it will pass the House by one vote, but it won't be heard in the Senate. And of course, if this were to get on Governor Walz's desk, he would certainly not sign. And they don't have the majority to override this. So look, it's not likely, but again, it's important these people are on record. Do they believe women are worthy of calling themselves champions or not? It's simple. This how they vote on this bill gives the Minnesotans and again the American people everything they need to know to be able to answer that question.
Riley Gaines, stay in the fight, keeps women upstream. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, you guys.
Right? Swimming.
I was not expecting the swimming upstream, but good for you.
Thank
a
you.
Nice little play on words there.
I do what I can. All right, let's talk about cyber criminals here. They can stitch pieces of personal information together from different people to create entirely new identities. They'll often target the identity of kids or the elderly to steal social security numbers and then fabricate other data. Once they have that, they open accounts, buy as much stuff as possible, and then let you sort out the mess when the bills hit your mailbox. It's just one of the many ways cyber crime is affecting all of us. Lots of places can accidentally expose your personal information, giving these cyber hackers a big head start. That's why it's so important to have LifeLock online identity theft protection. LifeLock detects and alerts you to potential identity threats you may not spot on your own, like loans taken out in your name. If you do become a victim of identity theft, a dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Terms apply. It's easy to help protect yourself with LifeLock. Join now and save 40% off your first year with my name, Buck, as your promo code. Call LifeLock, or go online to lifelock.com and use promo code BUCK for 40% off.